Good morning, welcome. We're going to begin by just providing some instruction for, we do have interpreters on the line this morning. You will be able to join and select the channel that you would like to listen in. You will see at the bottom of your tool meeting control panel, you can select interpretation and then select the language that you would like to hear, English or Spanish, and then you will hear translated audio in the language of your choice. And I will hand it over to Matías to provide the same information in Spanish.
Muchas gracias, Isabel. Bienvenidos a todos a este webinar. Les queremos dar acá una recomendación para el lenguaje en el panel de control. Ustedes pueden seleccionar donde dice interpretación. Van a haber desplegado dos canales, en donde dice Spanish o español. Ustedes pueden seleccionar este idioma para escuchar la traducción simultánea de vuestra preferencia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. So this is the second installment of the Power Sector Decarbonization Action Plan series. This installment will cover the Chilean action plan, the action plan developed by the country of Chile. Yes, this is the second of I believe 5 or 6 different installments of this webinar series, where we'll cover each country's different power sector decarbonization action plan. A few additional housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with attendees. Everyone is automatically muted upon joining and throughout the webinar. Please use the chat feature to add comments and share input. We are asking folks to use the Q&A function in the toolbar to ask questions. So the chat, again, we would love for folks to introduce themselves, let us know who's on the line today. While the Q&A function, if you have questions for Matías, for any of our speakers today, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions and we will address them at the end of the event. If you have any technical issues, you can use the chat feature to message me directly and I'm happy to help out. You can also adjust your audio through the audio settings. If you have any issues, you can use the dial-in and listen by phone. The dial-in information can be found in your registration email. And then finally, we will be launching a survey when the event ends, and we definitely value your feedback. So anything that you'd like to share, we do have a survey that will launch at the end of the event. So with that, I will hand it over to our moderator, Jal Desai from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Jal, I think you're muted.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Isabel. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. So this webinar, as Isabel mentioned, is the second part of the Power Sector Decarbonization Action Plan series. I know it's going to be very productive and interesting webinar. So this webinar is brought to you by Clean Energy Solution Center in partnership with 21st Century Power Partnership, two of the work streams of the Clean Energy Ministerial and the Ministry of Energy, Government of Chile. I welcome all the participants and speakers, and it's great to see participation from around the world. And please type in your questions in the Q&A section. Next slide. So let me give you a rundown of agenda and speakers for today's webinar. So first, we'll be giving the overview of the Clean Energy Solution Center, followed by 21st Century Power Partnership, and then we'll be hearing from a colleague from the Ministry of Energy from Chile, and then at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. Next slide, please. So before I do, let me introduce myself. So my name is Jal Desai. I'm a researcher at the U.S. National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado. I'm an electrical engineer by background. I work on various domestic and international projects in varying capacity. NREL is the operating agent of the Clean Energy some of the Clean Energy Ministerial work streams, and I manage the Clean Energy Solution Center at NREL, who is co-hosting this webinar. And I'll be moderating today's session. Next, we have Pratik Joshi. Pratik Joshi is an energy engineer and a project manager at the US National Renewable Energy Lab. He works on clean energy planning and deployment efforts for both domestic and international communities with focus on power systems and electrification. And Pratik will be giving an overview of the 21st Century Power Partnership. Next, we have Alex Santander. Alex is the head of division of the Ministry of Energy and Environmental Studies and Policy Division. Alex is an electrical engineer with MSc degree in the same field, with over 12 years of experience in diverse areas, including the planning and operation of power system. He has relevant experience in public institutions such as ISOs and the Ministry of Energy of Chile, where he currently leads the division and is responsible for the energy planning and policy. And lastly, we'll hear from Matías Perdes. Matías is Energy Planning and Regulation Analyst at the Ministry of Energy of Chile and Energy Planning and New Technologies Unit. Matías is a civil engineer and a PhD candidate in systems engineering with over 5 years of experience in the renewable energy sector. Next slide, please. Now, let me give you an overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Center. Next slide. So Clean Energy Solutions Center is one of the work streams or initiatives under the Clean Energy Ministerial. The objective of Clean Energy Solutions Center is to accelerate the transition of clean energy markets and technologies in developing nations. This initiative is co-led by Australia and US, and NREL is the operating agent of this initiatives. Solution Center partners with, they have more than 40 partners, including IRENA, IEA, REN21, IADB, and so forth. And there are 3 services basically that Solution Center offers. So those are Ask an Expert requests, webinars, and resource library, which I'll go in detail in the next slide. And again, here is the link to our website and to the fact sheet, which talks about the program. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, Clean Energy Solutions Center offers 3 services. So the first one, which is considered the jewel of the Solution Center, is Ask an Expert. Ask an Expert is designed to help policymakers in developing countries and emerging economies to identify and implement clean energy policy and finance solutions. The Ask an Expert service features a network of 50 experts from around the world. And to date, we have responded to 300+ requests submitted by 90+ governments and regional organizations from developing nations. And just to remind, this is a free service available to developing nations. The second service is training and capacity building. So since inception, we have delivered around 300 webinars, training more than 20,000 public and private sector stakeholders. And the last one is resource library. So we have over 1,500 curated reports, policy briefs, journal articles, and again, all of this are free for public to explore and refer to. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and my email address is listed on the slide. Next slide. Now I'll hand it to Pratik to give an overview of the 21st Century Power Partnership. Pratik.
Great, thanks, Jal, and hello, everyone. It's nice to be here, and I will give an overview, like Jal said, of the 21st Century Power Partnership. That's another initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and we work very closely with the Solutions Center. We've been supporting the development of these action plans, working closely with Chile and other countries over the past year. So really excited to share the findings from the action plans in this series. And so the next slide just captures our objectives, which the main objective is power system transformation. Our mission is to help accelerate the transition to clean, efficient, reliable, and cost-effective power systems. So we know the power system is changing in many different ways. Our colleagues from Chile will go into how it's changing in their country, but we have generation portfolios that are changing. We have electrification of transport, buildings, and industry. And then we have new technologies like smart grid technologies. We have differences in how energy is used in terms of energy efficiency and demand response. All these changes require new ways of planning, building, and operating power systems. And so we look to share those best practices for planning, building, and operating. And we do that through peer learning activities, knowledge sharing, and technical assistance. So one example of that is supporting the development of these country-led action plans. And so you'll see for Chile how they have started to implement some of these best practices. Next slide, please. So what is our focus areas, just to expand on that a bit more? In a typical year, our annual program of work can include thought leadership reports, in-country technical assistance, for instance, the action plans, or other information exchange capacity building activities. So to support the development of these action plans, we also held some workshops and webinars over the past year on different technical topics. So we had one on resource adequacy, for instance, and one on transmission planning. Next slide, please. So our recent activities over the past couple of years have been leading up to the development of these action plans. Leading up to the 13th Clean Energy Ministerial in 2022, we worked with a variety of different work streams that were focused on the power sector, and we developed this collaborative report for energy ministers on these lessons learned. And soon after this, I can drop the link to that fact sheet and that report in the chat. And then one of the key recommendations from this was, well, these best practices that have been compiled by all these work streams with a decade plus of experience, we should work to implement those, and countries around the world are already in the process of that. So we worked with a first cohort of countries to develop action plans based off that report. So we worked, of course, with Chile. We'll be presenting on their report in more detail today. We also worked with the European Union, India, Australia, the United Kingdom. So we have some follow-on webinars to come focused on the other countries. And then, like I said, we had some technical workshops on transmission planning and resource adequacy. I can also share those recordings with you in the chat as well. And then I believe our next slide has some information on where we're heading. So of course, this webinar series, this is webinar 2. We want to discuss those action plans in more detail. And then we also have plans to work with a second cohort of countries. The United States, Brazil, Canada, and others will be developing similar action plans to be released next year. All right, next slide. Great. So yeah, hopefully that helps provide some important context, and I'll pass it back over to my colleagues, Jal and Matthias and Alex. Thanks.
Thank you, Pratik, for giving an overview of the 21st Century Power Partnership. Now I'll hand it over to Matthias and to Alex, my bad. Alex, the floor is yours.
So just a quick reminder for those of you who, I will just give a quick reminder in Spanish, sorry. Para aquellos que se sumaron hace poco, tenemos traducción simultánea. En el panel pueden seleccionar traducción, luego en español. Entonces ahí pueden escuchar directamente en español si prefieren. Ahora dejo a Alex Santander. Adelante.
Thank you, Matthias. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yes.
can hear.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna speak in English, but if I have any problem, translators, you can help me, of course. So first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us to be part of this webinar, and I hope you are pretty good in this moment each. So it's a really pleasure to be here with all of you, talking a little about our experience in our country in terms of energy transition. And it's so important sharing with you about our experience and acquiring your own experience in so relevant topics for our countries as a decarbonization process. So I'm just going to tell you about some topics related with that process, and Matias Paredes will show you later more details about planning, building, and infrastructure and operation of our electrical power grid. So it's so important to mention that a lot of things that we are doing right now is under development. So I think if you want to know more on have more details, we can keep in touch for sharing with you the evolving of each of these things. So as you can see in the slide, Chile has developed different instruments for guiding the energy sector from 29, but it was in 2015, a very important year, when we launched our first energy policy called Energy 2050, that defined a shared long vision for the energy sector, developed with a broad participation, considering the industry, public sector, academy, civil society, among others, creating an important consensus that strengthens our policies and regulations. So in addition, during 2017, the Ministry of Energy developed for the very first time a long-term energy planning or LTEP process, which projected numerically the evolution of energy sector, allowing they understand how the sector is going to evolving in the short, medium, and long term. And with that, we can define practical actions that we need to push to achieve that future. So in the next slides, Matias is going to show you more details and application related with LTEP process. But talking about climate change in our country, energy sector is responsible for almost 80% of our national greenhouse gas emissions. So a problem needs to become in an opportunity to decarbonize our national economy. So by one hand, electricity sector contributes with around 30% of GHG emissions, but also is an enabling action for other actions that requires different ways and levels of electrification. So as an energy sector, we have a huge task to do in order to decrease our national GHG emissions and achieving our carbon neutrality, starting with a clear electrical power system with a coal phase out and reconversion process that we are facing in this moment that allow to include more clean and renewable energy in our power grid. So then during 2018 to 2019, as a country, we defined a route to achieve the carbon neutrality before 2050. And with that, Chile could subscribe a carbon neutrality commitment in the context of the COP25, talking about the Paris Agreement. But today, carbon neutrality is not only a commitment in our country, but also is now a legal mandate provided by the last year's enacted National Climate Change Framework Law. So moving into a carbon neutrality today is not an option. And ensure that it's so important today, and Chile will be a carbon neutral and resilient country before 2050. So in addition, we developed in the last years one of the most important instruments defined of the climate change law called the long-term climate strategy, and that it has defined sectoral carbon budgets where energy sector has a crucial role to play. So for achieving that, we built an initial plan to achieve carbon neutrality during 2019 and 2020. So today we are updating that plan constantly, but in general terms, there are 5 main pillars that will allow that: energy efficiency, renewable energies, and a clean electrical power system, of course, considering a coal phase out and reconversion process that we are developing in this moment, electromobility, green hydrogen, and the last pillar is forest capture, of course. So one of the most common points with almost everything group of this action are the need to electrify demand, direct and indirect, requiring a cleaner electrical power system that allowed carbon neutrality. So saying that our electrification levels will have an exponential growth in the next decades, with 2 or 3 times of our current demand, depending on the future scenario. So today, only a 24% of our total energy uses is provided by electricity, but in the 2050 could be almost 60 or 70% even. So the transition process in our electrical grids establish more challenges in the pursuit of total clean electricity power rates. And at the same time, we need to move into deeper technology changes, and we need to ensure an improving quality of service in the consumers of electricity, of course. So last year, in 2022, you can see the energy policy that I mentioned before was updated for the very first time by other government, and the vision, long-term vision, was maintained. So that explains energy policy is not only an instrument for a specific government, but it's a state policy, and this is so important. And in this update, we define some important goals for national decarbonization process. For example, a 100 of zero emissions energy in the electricity sector by 2050, a 70% of zero emission fuels in non-electric energy end uses by 2050, and another midterms goals, for example, more than 80% of renewable energy in the electrical sector by 2030, and more than 2 gigawatts on storage projects by 2030, and which is so important if we consider that our peak or maximum demand, electrical demand, is closer to 11 gigawatts. So 2 gigawatts is so important considering our maximum demand as well. So finally, in this moment, our main goal as a country is 2030. We are concentrated in create a concrete path between today and 2030, and we have already created a long-term vision before. So now is the moment to establish specific actions to 2030, created with consensus between different stakeholders in the energy sector. So today we know where we're headed, but now we are building how to get there, and that is so important thing. And so that is the reason why during this year we are launched 3 instruments with actions that put in the center of the discussion the actions that we need to promote to achieve a cleaner electrical power system. The first one, an initial agenda for a second stage of the energy transition. Second, an energy transition bill that we are included in the Congress of the country. And the third, a decarbonization plan. I'm talking about a decarbonization plan that it's a plan that it's going to build a roadmap with enabling regulatory, technological, and social conditions that will allow to accelerate our electrical decarbonization process. And it has been designed considering 3 axes. The first one, grid and market modernization and infrastructure. The second one, thermal reconversion and transition fuels. And the third one, just energy transition and communities. So in the first axis, we are going to review respect related with grid operation, digitalization, and automatization, reviewing the regulatory incentives that new technologies require and how can be implemented in the operation. In the second, we are going to review thermal reconversion alternatives in different coal power plants that we are closing right now, and the role that will have fuels as, for example, natural gas in the transition. And in the last axis, we are going to center in the just transition concept, with focus in options that energy projects could establish for improving the relationship between communities and projects, and how we can incentive more investment in cities where coal power plants are phasing out right now, to avoid a decrease of local economy in those places, promoting conversion between polluting industries to clean industries as well. So this is a very important opportunity for Chile. Chile has one of the best renewable potentials in the world. So we are working right now a lot in a territorial planning, because one of the most important challenge with renewables, we believe, is the use of landing and the modernization of grid operation. So that has been my words, and now I would like to leave you with Matthias, who is Energy Planning and Regulation Analysis at the Ministry of Energy, and he's going to explain you more details, some aspect related with our decarbonization process, among others. So thank you for your attention, and have a very good webinar. And so please, Matthias, go ahead.
Thank you, Alex. So this is a very good overview of Chilean energy policy. Now we will move to a very short overview of Chile's power sector. First of all, for those of you who are not very aware of where is Chile in the map, Chile is in the west side of South America, at the very south. Here will be here is Argentina, then will be Brazil. So Chile, this is Chile. Chile is a very long country. We have three main power systems. The main power system is the CESC, which has more than 3,000 kilometers. It's an interconnected system, and we have two isolated systems, one in Aysén and another one in Magallanes. We have a relevant electrification in Chile, around 99% of population. We have many companies coordinated, more than 700 companies. This is a very long country with distributed resources, as you will see in some slides. So we have, for example, some issues related with curtailment. For example, 5% of renewable energy generation during last year was curtailed. Regarding our institutions, we have 5 main institutions in Chile. Those, of course, institutions are regulated, and they have regulated governance, of course. First of all, there's the Ministry of Energy, which is responsible for developing and coordinating the agenda, policies, and standards of the electrical sector and the energy sector. In fact, there is the National Energy Commission, which is a technical organization responsible for defining, for example, tariffs and technical standards, among others. There is the Electricity and Fuels Superintendency, which is responsible for overseeing the energy sector in Chile. We have an ISO, which operates this big interconnected system called Coordinador Eléctrico Nacional. This ISO is responsible for ensuring economical and secure electricity supplies. And we have a panel of experts whose function is to solve, through opinions of binding effects, discrepancies, and conflicts. This is very important because we do not solve those conflicts in regular judges, for example, or we have an expert panel for this purpose. So this is the last slide was the institutions, but how are these institutions operate the regarding the technical aspects of the power systems? Well, we have if we separate the electrical sector in 4 sub-sectors, we have generation, transmission, distribution, and customers. Generation, transmission, and distribution in Chile are private. This is a very important thing to consider. There are no big state-owned companies in the electrical sector. So, for example, the generation sector is a private. There are only private companies. They operate with short-term dispatch based on costs, and they leverage their incomes with a long-term energy contracts. The transmission sector is a monopoly with regulated tariffs. It has an open access and fees regime with centralized planning methodology. The distribution sector is also a natural monopoly with regulated prices, and it's a private owned. And customers have the options to have to be regulated and to be free customers, depending on their power capacity. And if they are regulated, of course, they have some fixed prices, and if not, they can directly have contracts with the generation side. So the Ministry of Energy, National Energy Commission, Electricity and Fuels Superintendency operate at the whole electrical system. However, the ISO operates just the generation and transmission part. And of course, the panel of experts operates the solving issues in any of these subsectors. As Alex mentioned, in Chile, almost 80% of the GHG emissions are related to the energy sector. Of the total, among a third is related with power sector. This means that the energy transition can be seen as a solution for the climate change crisis and air pollution. So how do we connect the energy transition actions with mitigation of the emissions? So here we see a graph of the reduction of emissions in a carbon neutral scenario at 2050. We have 5 main mitigation actions that will allow us to be a carbon neutral country by 2050. Those actions are sustainable industry, green hydrogen, electromobility, sustainable buildings, phase out of coal generation, and energy efficiency. And it's important to mention that coal phase out is an enabling condition for many of these, right? It's important to mention that if we not implement this, then any of these numbers will change. We cannot have this introduction of green hydrogen if we are not thinking about coal phase out, for example. Okay, this is an overview of Chile. This is Chile, and as you can see, this is a map of the renewable sources or renewable capacities that we have. Renewable potential. In the north of Chile, which is this, we have excellent solar radiation. So it's a good place to for solar generation, and we also have some places with excellent wind capacity factors. And in the south of Chile, we also have excellent wind capacity factors. However, as we will see in some slides, the demand is mostly concentrated in the central part of Chile. There is some industrial demand also in the north, where we have the good solar resources, but this important demand in the central part of Chile, as you can see here, the capital Santiago is located in the central part, so we have a good a big demand here. This implies that we need to transit power through the north, from the north to the center of Chile, and also from the south to central part of Chile. that of course means transmission. This is a very interesting slide. It shows how the history of Chilean mix, the history of the Chilean mix, and also how we project this Chilean mix. Historically, the electrical Chilean power system has been a hydrothermal system. Let's focus on this part. As you can see, here we have important contribution of hydro generation. At some point, we have a severe drought in 1998, and then we started to increase thermal contribution. Then we had some shortage of gas supply in 2004, and then this energy mix changed a little bit with the construction of new natural gas terminals and new coal power plants by the year 2009. And then at some point, considering mainly the climate ambitions of Chile, we started with and also the decrease in investment prices in solar and wind power mainly. Then there was a renewable takeoff around the year 2014. So here we are in the year 2023. And as Alex mentioned, we are experiencing a phase out of coal power generation. So here, if you take a look at from this point to the right, you will see that coal power generation is projected to decrease by the year 2040. We expect that we have a full decommission of those power plants, and of course a reconversion if possible. And of course, the penetration of solar energy and wind energy will increase. And at some point, as these sources will need some other requirements, specifically, for example, inertia, then we will, and also they are variable. So we will need some energy sources with a management capacity. So that's why you will observe that as we have more variable renewable energy sources, then we will have to, or we will project an introduction of these energy sources with management capacities, such as, for example, solar CSP and storage here. So as we mentioned, we are experiencing a phase out of coal generation. This is the trajectory of the phase out, and this recovery, carbon neutrality, and accelerated carbon neutrality are scenarios that we are considering in the long-term planning exercise. And we currently now we have a commitment to have a full decommission and reconversion of those coal power plants by the year 2040, but we expect to move at some point in between 2040 and 2030. Of course, this has to be with the private companies and society too, so it has to be discussed very in detail to arrive at some of this point, because it has some important technical requirements. This is the also in the planning. This is the projections of the generation, and as you can see, here we observe that the storage, important contribution of storage in all of the scenarios in some point in the decade of 2030. So now let's move to the how to promote the building of those means. Here we have a snapshot of the infrastructure sector, infrastructure of the electrical sector in Chile. We have around 34 gigawatts of installed capacity. We have currently a phase out of something like 1.2 gigawatts of those power plants regarding the year 2018 until now. As I mentioned before, in Chile, the electrical markets mostly the generation is mostly paid in terms of energy, but there is also payment regarding power and also ancillary services. So this is a snapshot of our system now, and we project the main change that we project is related to a transmission line called Quimal Aguirre, which will connect the north part of Chile with the central. This is a direct relation with what I mentioned before, that we need to move those big solar potentials in the north to the south, to the center where the demand is. So how do we do this? Because as you may recall, the generation, transmission, and distribution is private in Chile. So we provide the conditions or signals through regulation to promote the installment of those investments. So we have a law project in at the parliament currently that calls for promotion of urgent investment in transmission. And also this comes with the promotion of storage. Of course, we are looking at specific solutions, such as including storage in some specific parts in nodes of the system, such as the Barinas substations. Currently, we have a law that allows for storage in standalone projects and payment in energy and power markets. This was not this law included this. This was not we didn't have this before in our markets, and now we have to come with the regulation for this specific law. We have a law project that established a new energy quota obligation with 60% of annual participation of the renewable energy sources and 40% of block participation by the year 2030. And we also want to increase the pace of the distributed energy sources. Now, this is just a graph that shows that for these quotas, there are many sources like these 8 studies that mention that yes, we can have this share by the year 2030. And of course, to have this law for promotion of storage, we were looking at how is this being promoted by the private sector, and we have more than 50 projects that consider storage. These energy projects, such as solar projects or a mix of solar and wind, just wind or hydro projects, they consider storage, and those projects account for more than 600 gigawatts of power. This is just an example of how do we use regulation to promote investment, to promote distributed energy sources. Those are, we call PMGD. These are, for example, a photovoltaic power plant installed directly in a distribution network. This is very important that we promote this, because as the transmission lines, big transmission line in the national system takes time to be developed, here we can use existing infrastructure to put or promote, the installment of clean energy sources very near those the demand. So in order to increase the participation of those energy sources, first we had a regime in which we had a fixed price, which is this one. So for any time block of the day, you will be paid with a fixed price. So until last year, we had this increase in distributed energy sources. As you can see, they were mostly solar photovoltaic. So at some point, it was like, okay, we have promoted this the inclusion of distributed energy sources. However, if we see the price and we compare this with the system prices, you will observe that the fixed price is above the system price during those time blocks of the solar energy of solar power. So it's in a system perspective, we are paying more than we should. So for all of those investments that we want to promote from now on, we will have a different regime, which will be stabilized prices, which is the red curve, and this will be a more harmonic signal. So this is and of course this is changed in the regulation for new investments. So this is how we see the regulation for promoting investment. It's a dynamic way of promoting investment according to what the system needs. Of course, always looking for having the best for citizens. In this case, best price for citizens. How do we see the operation of this grid that we are promoting? Here is a snapshot of last year operations. Here you can see how is the generation in the north, in the center, and in the south. And as I mentioned before, we have important curtailment of renewable energy sources, variable renewable energy sources in the north, mainly due to congestions. This is the curtailment in the north. So we not only need transmission to move this curtailment, but we can also need storage options to use this curtailment in, for example, in the night, where we use thermal energy. This is how this is not real data, this is projections at the year 2030 in a carbon neutral scenario. This is a part of the long-term energy planning exercise. And as you can see, in the north of Chile, we expect to have relevant generation with the energy management. In this case, is CSP and storage. And in the side of the demand, we still have a relevant demand in the central part of Chile, but we expect to new technologies such as green hydrogen that we will expect that will be installed in the north of Chile to use any good prices, or if there's any curtailment, for example, we can use it in producing green hydrogen. This is a slide that just shows how it should be a good way of operating the system. In this case, green hydrogen production is in the day, and storage is used in the nighttime. This is demand and this is generation. So just to with this slide, I will finish. We also are considering new technologies such as green hydrogen. As you may know, Chile has a really good potential for exporting green hydrogen. In fact, we expect to develop an exporting industry in order to use the economy scales to have good prices for us too in Chile for the use of green hydrogen in Chile. And we are expecting in the range of 40 gigawatts capacity by the year 2030. So some of these projects will be off-grid too, but this is a relevant number that we need to look at. And this is green hydrogen as a source of demand, but we also have a lithium strategy announced. In this case, this will be like a supply for the energy transition. So it's just wanted to mention that we have a lithium strategy announced in which we'll promote public institutions mainly. We have some other challenges. And just to mention, net demand management studies, the traceability of electricity in order to accurate account that this electricity is renewable, comes from renewable sources. And of course, we need to work on cybersecurity technical standards. And as future challenges, we see the inclusion and use of the smart meters. And mainly, and of course, inclusion of controllable loads, for example, electric vehicles. So that's my presentation. Here are some references if you need to check on any data. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. It was really insightful to learn and know what Chile is doing. We only have 8 minutes, but we have got few questions, and I'll read it out to you and see if you can answer those. So we have got one question from Glenn. So it's a 2-part question. So thinking of lessons for other countries, the first part is, what would you advise other countries in terms of a tipping point? When did the momentum really open up for the energy transition as a state policy? And the second part to that is, are you worried about anything that could derail the energy transition in Chile?
Sorry, energy that will be?
Are you worried about anything anything that could derail the energy transition in Chile?
Yes. Well, I will start with the second one. I would say that transmission lines development in Chile is not easy. We are a very long country, so just to mention, I will come here to this slide. Our main project is a HVDC line with 1,500 kilometers. Just imagine that, to build one of these projects. So we expect the operation of this line by the year 2029. And of course, in the planning exercise, we see some other alternatives, not only this, but any of these alternatives, we know that they take a lot of time to get into operation. So that's something that could be of a worry. And lessons in terms of tipping points. Let me think of that. I would say it depends a lot of the structure of your power system. In this case, we are very influenced by this characteristic that we have. But the electrical sector is mostly private, so we have to provide signals in a timely manner. We cannot provide a signal late. Right? If we started discussions now, and then we provide the signals 5 years later, then we will not have the laws and the regulation of the laws in order to provide, for example, the signals of for private investors to have those projects in operation. So I would say depends a lot of this on this, if you are more inclined to the private sector, or if not, if you are a country with a good participation of state-owned companies, then you can monitor those signals of the market and come in a timely manner faster, I would say.
Perfect. Thanks, Matthias. So we have got 2 more questions. So the other one is, have you considered, as part of the phase out of coal power plants, their use as asynchronous compensators?
I've seen some studies that mention that we are considering a storage options, for example, using this infrastructure in order to transform those power plants to molten salt, for example. I've seen that option of a synchronous compensator too. There's also the co-firing of ammonia, for example, or other mixes. But yes, I've seen that. I'm not sure if there is any big project in Chile considering a synchronous compensator, but it's always in the discussion. That can be, of course, a good option.
Thanks, Matthias. And in the interest of time, we'll take one more question. So, is there any plan to replace coal and natural gas used in power sector by biofuels, such as biopellets for confirming, or bio-CNG?
Biopellets. I wouldn't say there is a big project for that in Chile. I haven't heard of a big project for that. In the case of Chile, I'm not sure we are a country like Brazil, for example, that produce this type of biofuels. So I'm not sure we have big projects like that. However, we have a good potential for a green hydrogen. So at some point in the future, maybe we can be discussing the co-firing, for example, of coal and ammonia, or we can be discussing the use of natural gas and hydrogen directly on a turbine. That's something that I will expect more than but in the sense of alternative fuels.
Perfect. Thanks, Matthias. And now I think we can end this presentation. Again, it's really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing all the details and the work that Chile is doing. Again, I would like to thank all of the participants for joining today's webinar. The next webinar, which is on the Australian Spotlight, is scheduled for October 31st. And my colleague Isabel will put the registration link in the chat. So if you're interested, please do register. And then with the European Commission, it's scheduled for mid-November. So keep an eye out for the registration link. And the presentation and the recording will be posted on the Clean Energy Solution Center's website, as well as it would be emailed to all of the participants. But again, I would like to thank everyone, and we'll see you for the next webinar.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.